Another year of the Green Bay Packers being one of the biggest question marks across the entire NFL. Last season, they were borderline elite in so many key metrics, both offensively and defensively, and yet they somehow only won a single division game the entire season, and it was against Chicago, and only by 1 point at that. From week to week, you just kind of never knew if you were going to be getting a top 5 team in the league or a team that just shouldn't even be in the playoffs. So today we're going to do our very best to unravel the mystery of what the hell this team even is. If you're new here, by the way, this is day 14 of the annual Bootleg Summer Series. And in each one of these episodes, we use film, analytics, salary cap breakdowns, and all manner of nitty-gritty football nerddom to answer the 3 questions that make up the central pillar of this series. What was this team's identity before? What is their identity now? And what does a successful 2025 season for this team actually look like? If you're a Packers fan and you're trying to get a better idea of why this team is so good, but in like a frustrating kind of way, you've come to the right place. So Jay, Autumn, Anthony, roll the intro.
Welcome back to the Bootleg Football Podcast. I'm EJ, that's Brett, and today is one of our more difficult days of the year. We have to say nice things about the Packers. The real problem is it's not that hard to do. The 2024 Packers were a startlingly good analytics team, but they were also absolute agents of chaos. So the roller coaster ride was all over the place. Matt LaFleur trying to keep Jordan Love from doing the full Jameis Winston. You never want to go full Jameis Winston. He did, by the way. Defense was improved under Jeff Hafley, but outside of some stunning numbers we'll talk about in just a second, that defensive performance really hinged on one player. So, I don't know. Today's going to be a bit of a Scooby-Doo episode. We get to yank the mask off and try and find out who this team really is. You ready to solve a mystery, Brett?
This is a really interesting team. And I mean that both positively and negatively. I don't think they're a bad team at all. In fact, I think everybody would consider the Packers pretty good. I don't think anybody actually wanted to play the Packers last season. They were a legitimate threat to everybody, as long as they weren't an NFC North team. And I think that bears out in the results. You know, they were highly effective from week to week, but they were also their own worst enemy in a lot of ways. And this is perhaps the only team that we're going to talk about all summer long where I have the same notes for the offense and the defense, which is lacked true star power, had to win through scheme and execution because they couldn't out-talent anybody. And it worked, sort of, mostly, for the most part, unless they were playing their own division. It mostly worked, but the fact that I could look at this legitimately good team and maybe find 2 true stars, or at least star adjacent players per unit, and that's being generous, and yet they're still as effective as they were. I can't really think of any other teams across the NFL that did, maybe it's unfair to say more with less, but kind of, yeah, more with less. How many other teams could have done what they did while leaning on Xavier McKinney and Josh Jacobs when you're looking at some of the other teams in the NFL and the star power they have to work with? You built the whole plane out of Josh Jacobs and Xavier McKinney and it almost worked? That's kind of impressive.
It didn't almost work. It really worked. And when we get into the power score, it's shocking. There isn't another way to put that. This is one of the teams that, as I was putting power score together this summer, I went, what? No, that's wrong. And it's not wrong, but week to week, you're not wrong. It was really difficult to figure out whether this team was more Dr. Jekyll or Mr. Hyde, and they were some of both every week, and sometimes they were those things to themselves. You said their own worst enemy, and it just was sort of the wrong thing showing up at the wrong time, but they still were really good. This is an 11-6 team. Third in their own division, largely because they couldn't win against their own division mates. 6-3 at home, 5-3 on the road. Last 5 games, 2-3. And that aforementioned power score, it's based on their passing offense, their rushing offense, rushing defense, passing defense, points scored, and points allowed. We use EPA to figure those things out. And this is one of the few teams, if not one of the only teams in the NFL that has no double-digit ranks for any of those numbers. They are literally top 10 in everything. Passing offense, 7th. Rushing offense, 9th. Pass defense, 3rd. Rush defense, 8th. 8th best points scored and 6th best scoring defense. You take all that, divide it by 6. This is the 4th best power score in the league for an 11-6 team that couldn't beat its own division. It's ridiculous. And if you look at why, when you go into, again, high single-digit ranks, Matt LaFleur was absolutely cooking. Jordan Love, this might be the most 2024 Packers statistic ever. Jordan Love had 16 big-time throws and 13 turnover-worthy plays. And it's just like, so what are you going to be this week? And it's flip a coin. The receivers dropped the 5th most passes in the league, and they were still a top 10 scoring offense with all of that, just gestures at everything. On defense, you mentioned Xavier McKinney, and he was the guy I was talking about in the opening that really made a huge difference for this defense. He had 8 interceptions and 11 passes defended. And honestly, if he hadn't been there, these defensive ranks would have looked a lot different. He was the highest impact newcomer in free agency, I think probably in the league last year. He played the lights out. He was exactly what they needed. But again, the weeks where he had an interception, which is basically every other week, they did pretty well. The weeks where he didn't have an interception, again, they didn't lose by much. They were steady. You can't get top 10 rankings without being that. But yeah, how much of this team rode on 3 or 4 players that aren't necessarily considered top of the league players? I don't know, man.
Yeah, didn't lose by much is an understatement. Like, if you go to our infographic, again, we have companion infographics for every single team in this series. One of the stats that we track is average margin of defeat. And this team had the lowest average margin of defeat in the entire NFL, just 4 points. So their average loss was by just barely over a field goal. Average. And the fact that most of those tiny, narrow losses were against the Bears, Vikings, and Lions, like, you could make the case that this team should have been in the running for the 1 seed for the NFC. Keyword should have been. And from that standpoint, I understand why Packers fans were so frustrated with last season, because they felt like one of the best teams in the NFL, but you couldn't quite put your finger on like what was wrong. Like, you knew something was wrong, but you couldn't quite understand it in the moment. And that's why, we love doing these kind of after action reports where we can really dive in and see like, where were they good? Where were they bad? But in the moment, it felt like they should be winning more than they are. and they just wouldn't. So, I don't want to say I have sympathy for Packers fans, but I kind of do. Like, last year felt like a little bit of a missed opportunity.
For sure, a really good team, tremendous coaching staff. We've been fans of Matt LaFleur really since he entered the division, and I say fans from afar. It's not fun to play against him because his teams are always really well prepared. But when you look at them from the outside, all the losses were super high leverage. I mean, week 1's just weird across the NFL anyways, but you drop one to an NFC opponent and it happens to be the Eagles, who go on to win the Super Bowl. All your other losses are in the division. So if you're just one of those sort of NFC North fans who happens to root for the Packers, every time you watch them play somebody in the division, you're like, why can't we beat these clowns? We beat everybody else. And look, we know the division was really, really good. We're going through it all week. We're going to talk about how good the top 2 teams in this division were. It was historic in terms of how they dueled each other down to the finish. But as a Packers fan, you got to just look up every week and go, why can't we get one over on our own division? We're really talented. We play really well. We're super consistent on both sides. Well, we're super consistent on defense. I don't really know why we can't pull this off. And I can see where the frustration comes from. Not that Packers fans aren't due for a little bit of frustration, but like you said, very difficult to put your finger on. And I think that makes it even more frustrating when you can't say it's his fault, it's their fault, like it's the pass defense's fault, or it's all Jordan Love's fault. It wasn't ever in any given week. And that makes it a little bit like chasing your tail.
I do want to start with the defense because you mentioned that they were very consistent on defense, and that's true, but not always in a positive way. Jeff Hafley, he had a reputation coming in of being like a heavy cover 3 guy, and I remember last summer we were talking about when he was coming over, like, oh, this team's they're gonna play an absolute shit ton of cover 3. That was still their most common coverage, but it was their most common coverage in the way that like the mid-2000s Bears had cover 3 as their most common coverage. Their hallmark was not cover 3. Their hallmark was actually cover 2, just like the mid-2000s Bears. There's kind of like a misconception of all those old Tampa 2 defenses of like they just played cover 2 every snap. They didn't. Like the Bucs didn't do that. The Bears didn't do that. Any quote-unquote Tampa 2 defense ever has always still had cover 3 as the main coverage. But as far as stopping the pass, this team was very much like those Lovie Smith defenses in the sense that they relied way more on cover 2 as well as playing quarter, half, or half, quarter than cover 3. If you're looking at all of the coverage percentages, and again, I'll mention our handy dandy companion infographic. Again, you could find that at the link in the description below on the Patreon or at the QR code on the screen. We have all of this coverage data broken down for you, so you don't need to write down notes. It's all right there for you. We also have it broken down by like down and distance and everything like that. You have blitz rates, all this data. But if you're looking at that companion infographic right now, you'll see that they were 3rd in cover 2 overall. They were 9th in calling cover 2 on first down. They were 4th in calling cover 2 on second down, and they were 2nd in calling cover 2 on third down at a whopping 36%. Simultaneously, they were 29th in quarters, and they were 24th in cover 1. So playing cover 3 to get themselves in position to play cover 2 was their identity. And as a result of playing so much cover 2, teams didn't really throw deep on them because it's pretty hard to throw deep on cover 2. That's why you call cover 2. So if you're looking at overall deep shot percentage, they had the 3rd lowest deep pass percentage faced at only 9.1%. Teams didn't test them deep because of the coverage structures they were in. And yet, this is where we kind of swing slightly towards the negative end. They were still 24th in successful play allowed percentage because they still allowed a ton of completions in the intermediate. All that to say, playing cover 2 helped them stop the long ball, but they were not good at stopping the intermediate pass game, specifically the intermediate in between the numbers pass game. If you're looking at a targeted depth of 10 to 19 yards, not 20 plus, 10 to 19, 40% of every target they faced in that area of the field went for an explosive gain. That was the 2nd worst rate in the entire league. So if you threw 5 passes to the intermediate level, 2 of them were going to go for explosive gains. That's not ideal. If you're looking at yards per attempt allowed at that depth, they were 8th worst in the league. Their only saving grace, truly, their only saving grace was they got a lot of picks. 8 of them at that depth, to be exact. That's a ton by NFL standards. In fact, only 3 teams in the NFL had more picks at that targeted depth than the Packers, and 2 of them happen to be in their own division because, of course, they were Vikings and Detroit. So, I'm kind of painting a picture here for this Packers defense. Inconsistent pass rush because they don't have a star pass rusher, like I mentioned at the top. They didn't have somebody they could rely on to get consistent stops for them on third down. So they had to rely on a platoon of guys to ideally play better than the sum of their parts. And sometimes they did and sometimes they didn't. Very inconsistent in that regard. And they had to rely on these coverage structures to not get beat deep because they didn't have the pass rush necessary to stop quarterbacks from throwing it deep. So I think Jeff Hafley, all that to say, I think Jeff Hafley did a really good job coordinating this defense with the pieces that he had. But oh my God, this team needs a pass rusher because without having a true star pass rusher that can allow them to get away with playing more man coverage and allow them to get away with playing more, I don't want to say risky coverages, but coverages that are less safe against the deep ball, he's going to be forced to do this again, which is play mostly cover 2 and then pray that his linebackers don't get roasted over the middle, and like pray that Xavier McKinney can like bail him out with timely interceptions because he had an all-pro caliber season. Like, they were kind of on a knife's edge and it worked, but how many years in a row is that going to work? I look at every great Tampa 2 defense ever, and the one common denominator is like they had like 4 Hall of Famers. Like, you look at the early 2000s Bucks, it's like, okay, yeah, you could play that much cover 2 if you have 4 guys that are going to be Hall of Famers. Or you look at the mid 2000s Bears, it's like, yeah, Brian Urlacher's your Mike linebacker. You could do that over and over again. I don't know if the Packers have the talent to do this multiple years in a row and expect the same results.
Very hard to hold up against Lady Luck with things like sacks and picks. And they didn't get a ton of sacks, but as you said, they bailed themselves out with a ton of picks. Betting on that strategy again is really difficult. And Jeff Hafley, if you're looking at the personnel they've assembled to march into 2025, is going to have to moneyball that pass rush again. They did not go out and get a star pass rusher either at the top of the draft. They got some good ones that are, again, rotational pieces, and they're trying to get it in the aggregate. But depending on picks to bail you out is a risky strategy. I liked what Hafley did. I thought it was a welcome change for the Green Bay defense. He's got his work cut out for him. Again, we'll talk about why, but the reason that defense looked the way it did was Xavier McKinney, make no mistake.
On the offensive side of the ball, very similar discussion to what we just had. Again, lack of true star power at receiver to dictate coverages. So they had to win through scheme and execution because they couldn't just out-talent you. Josh Jacobs was the only guy on the team that could out-talent you on offense. And I'm not going to hear any arguments about how Jordan Love is a star. He is not a star quarterback. He is a good quarterback, but like, where's the line of demarcation between good quarterback and star quarterback? I think he's just below that line where it's like, I think it was worth it for them to pay him because the way his contract is structured, it really doesn't hurt them at all. He doesn't make as much as it looks like on the AAV. So it's not like a debilitating contract for them. But nobody's going to look at Jordan Love right now, considering all of the truly horrific turnovers and the baffling decisions and the inconsistency. Nobody's going to look at Jordan Love right now and be like, oh yeah, that's a top 10 quarterback in the NFL. Could be talent-wise, but he's not right now. So as far as guys on this offense that are top 10 at their position, it's Josh Jacobs and Zach Tom. And so the fact that Matt LaFleur put together an offense that was that good, top 10 in scoring, without a top 10 quarterback, good quarterback, not top 10 quarterback, and without really a true number one receiver to speak of, and while having that many drops, and while having to rely so much on just running the damn ball, like this was the highest run pass rate in the entire league at almost 50-50, which is, it sounds like it should be 50-50. It's, most teams aren't 50-50 run pass rate. Like, if you're approaching that, it means that you run the ball more than anybody else. And the Packers did, because that was what they could rely on. And I think that kind of speaks to the brilliance of Josh Jacobs, but also the fact that they really didn't want to make Jordan Love throw on neutral run pass situations on early downs more than they needed to. Like, they ran 61% of the time on first down. Like, that's kind of insane by modern NFL standards. And I think that kind of tells you what Matt LaFleur knew they were good at, which was, we're going to run the ball, we're going to use play action, and we're going to RPO you to death. Like, their RPO rate was extremely high, third highest in the entire NFL. And so I'm trying not to be overly negative because it sounds like I don't like Jordan Love. I do like Jordan Love, but this offense doesn't operate in a manner that makes me think that the Packers think that Jordan Love is a top 10 quarterback. Like, you don't run the ball that much, and you don't rely that much on RPOs, and you don't rely that much on play action, like, play action from shotgun, not even from under center, play action from shotgun. You don't rely on it that much if you think you have the guy at quarterback. And I think that's kind of telling.
Proof is in the numbers. I have a friend that says, don't tell me what your priorities are. Show me your budget. And it's the same for the Packers. Don't tell me what you think you have. Show me what you've actually got. Show me what you put, on paper, on grass. And that was Josh Jacobs running the ball. I remember last summer I was cautiously optimistic about the fit. A lot of people thought it was sort of an even fit. I thought it might have been an upgrade. About 6 or 8 weeks into the season, I remember reaching out to our buddy Tom Grassi, and I was like, man, Josh Jacobs is playing the lights out. He is really, really good in this offense. Tom was like, absolutely. He's the guy driving the bus right now. And you don't keep the ball out of your quarterback's hands that much if you think putting the ball into his hands is the best way to win. And right now, Matt LaFleur is maximizing Jordan Love the best he can, and it's not the other way around. We talked about some other teams already in this series where the quarterback's really keeping the coach employed. That's not the case in Green Bay. It goes the other way around.
I am curious, though, like Packers fans, do you consider Jordan Love a top 10 quarterback? Right? Because just off the top of my head, obviously you have the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse. You have Mahomes, you have Lamar, you have Allen, you have Burrow. Stafford, I would put above him. Jaden last year, I would put above him. That's 6 already. Jalen Hurts, I'd put above him at this point. Again, I'm doing this purely off the dome, so I might even forget some obvious ones. Baker Mayfield, I'd put above him. I would put, so what are we at, 8? Goff, obviously, I would put above him. I would say there's got to be a super obvious one that I'm missing, right?
Herbert.
Oh, yeah, easy. Herbert. So, like, we're already, 11 deep? 10, 11 deep? Before we're even having a discussion? I think it's fair to say that, like, again, it's not that they overpaid him because, again, his contract structure is super manageable. But I think it's fair to say that he is not the straw that stirs the drink there. And when they drafted a receiver in the first round for the first time, like literally decades, I think that was their acknowledgement of like, we need to bring in some guys that can help elevate him because he is not the type of quarterback that can elevate this receiving core that was made up of, let's be honest, a bunch of high-end number 2s last year. He's not going to be elevating them into prominence. We need to bring a guy in who can elevate Jordan. And it's kind of a unique position that they find themselves in because it's been a while since they've had a quarterback situation that was somebody who wasn't necessarily elevating everybody else that was on the team.
Yeah, and he's got top 10 flashes, and he can hit those targets if you bring them in. And I think it's the realization and the admission of we need more targets because it's not that he can't hit them or he's not a good quarterback. We're not saying that before you jump in the comments and say we hate Jordan Love. Jordan Love is a top half quarterback in the NFL, and his flashes are top 10. He has top 10 talent sometimes, not all the time. And until he gains that consistency, and that's what the Packers are hoping for by adding targets, is that they can bring him more opportunities to show those high-end flashes in his game. And if they do, this offense is going to be even scarier because, again, with everything that we've said, they were still a top 10 scoring offense last year without those targets and the run-pass imbalance and the turnovers. That's sort of mind-boggling. If we said all those things about another offense, you'd probably go, oh, that's like the 20th ranked offense in the NFL. No, it was top 10. So Matt LaFleur is a tremendous coach. We've talked about him a lot. The guy that is bringing in the groceries to make these meals is Brian Gutekunst, the GM. And yeah, the admission that they finally, after all the historic sandbagging of not picking a receiver in the first round for years and years when Aaron Rodgers sort of banged the table for one and finally going, guys, I think we need to do it this year. That was Brian Gutekunst's call. And I'm sure it was Matt LaFleur's call as well, because those two know each other really well, have been working together for a long time, and they have made a very strong sort of personnel foundational base in Green Bay that keeps this team competitive every year. The offensive coordinator is Adam Stenovich. The defensive coordinator we talked about is Jeff Hafley going into year 2. And the special teams coordinator is Rich Bisaccia, who, again, has an interim head coach title on his resume, brings a lot of experience to this staff. Other notable coaches, we have to talk about the Lukes. Luke Butkus, the offensive line coach. Yes, that Butkus. He is the nephew of Dick Butkus. And it does a tremendous job with the Packers offensive line. You talked about Zach Tom, but every year, and they did it again this year, we'll talk about it in the draft, they pick offensive linemen. You go, well, crap, that guy's going to be good. Why? Because of where he's landing, the system he's going into, and the way they develop offensive linemen. A lot of that can be traced back to Luke Butkus. Luke Getsy, notable. I don't know that it's notable good, but you remember when the Patriots assistants used to leave and fail and then go back and be good again? That's kind of Luke Getsy. Left, went to the Bears, flamed out, is back with the Packers, and he has the ubiquitous senior assistant title on offense. And then Sean Mannion is the quarterback's coach. Yeah, that's Sean Mannion. Oregon State, big, tall drink of water, spent time with a bunch of teams in the NFL, and he is now the quarterback's coach in Green Bay. On defense, I wanted to highlight Derek Ansley, who's the defensive pass game coordinator, because again, without the secondary and the way they played last year, this defense would not have been a top 10 unit. So Derek Ansley gets his flowers for that work.
It's a really, really good staff. Like one of, in my opinion, the better head coach, coordinator, offensive, defensive, and special teams coordinator foursomes in the league. I think their position coaches are good. I'm not 100% sure what Getsy's responsibilities will be, but like Matt LaFleur's there, so like it'll be fine. Like the Matt LaFleur effect covers up a lot of whatever the hell Luke Getsy does every single Sunday. But like I look at this staff and I'm like, damn, a lot of teams would kill for that. Like they really, really would. And I think that they are the secret sauce. Like this is a very coach-led organization. I think they do a tremendous job of putting their players in position to succeed. I think they do a tremendous job of developing talent. I couldn't, other than Getsy, just because we've seen what he looked like outside the organization, I really can't think of any coaches that I would ever question on this staff.
It's just a professionally run organization, and you can't say that about every team in the NFL. The decisions they make seem to make sense. LaFleur has a good handle on the team as both a leader and obviously as a play caller. It just seems very together, even when it gets noisy outside. I think the mark of a good team, the hallmark of a good coach and coaching staff is he sets that example of calm leadership and we've got it and sort of marching ahead. And that's based on demonstrated excellence. He's done it for years now. So a lot of coaches will come to the podium when everything's going to hell and say, no, we got it. We just need to execute. And you go, no, coach, that's baloney. You're out of touch. I never feel like Matt LaFleur is out of touch. And I feel like what he is saying is genuine because he goes out every Sunday and demonstrates that he's got one of the best handles in the NFL on his team.
Before we get into the free agency section, I want to bring up an interesting point, or maybe an interesting hypothetical. So, recently I did that video on how the Eagles maneuver their cap situation, right? Using bonus structures and paying a bunch of cash up front and then prorating it on the back end and throwing a bunch of void years on deals. And like Jordan Love obviously made an appearance in that video because he was one of several quarterbacks that I cited that had void years on the back of their deals to make their AAVs, like their AAVs are inflated, but the actual cap percentages year to year are very manageable. That's why I don't like, even though I don't have Love as a top 10 quarterback, I don't think his contract is a problem whatsoever because of the way it's structured. And, there was a point that I made at the end of the episode where I'm like, hey, Jeff Lurie is actually not one of the richer owners in the NFL. Like he doesn't come from like a real estate empire. Like he doesn't have $20 billion. Most of his wealth is tied up in the team. And so in order to afford to pay for these contract structures up front, because you need a lot of liquidity, he sold off 8%, as an 8% stake in the Eagles last year to raise $660 million. I think it valued him at like $8.2 billion as a franchise. And that allowed him to pay out all these deals in the structure that they have. And so clearly, like, you don't need to be the upper echelon of wealth among NFL owners to make these types of deals work. But that brings up an interesting discussion when it comes to the Packers, because they can't just do that, right? And in some ways is a disadvantage, but then I thought maybe it's actually an advantage that no other franchise has, because I think Packers fans are so incredibly diehard that if the team went to them and was like, hey, guys, we need to raise $500 million like in cash right now to build our team the same way the Eagles built, I think Packers fans would do it. Like, they would buy shares, they would buy merch, like they would throw the collective wealth of Packer Nation into this franchise, like without having to sell off an 8% stake of the team to some venture capitalist or something like that. And I almost went from thinking it's a disadvantage to an advantage that they can actually raise the funds from their own fans anytime they want to or need to. Obviously, if they blow that money over and over and over again, fans would lose conviction in giving it to them. But I almost feel like the Packers are going to be uniquely situated to navigate these financial waters in terms of how modern NFL rosters are built, because they kind of have an unlimited source of funds from their own fan base.
It's a fascinating discussion to have, especially with all the movement we're seeing with NIL in college and the regulation and everything else. Green Bay, in a lot of ways, feels more like a college atmosphere because of fan ownership and the unique structure of the team. And Green Bay fans are everywhere, man. Like, they travel. You'll be in Arizona, right? You're walking along and you see a Packers flag in the front yard. And you see another one and you're like, where am I? And the answer is anywhere and everywhere. Packers fans really do support the team. And yeah, they might have it can't be more unique. They might have a unique approach to fundraising that no other team has.
It's going to be fascinating to see how the next 10 years shakes out, because I don't know if this void year stuff is going to get banned or not. Like, obviously some teams want it banned, some teams don't. I don't really know where the Packers fall on that discussion, but I think that they would be good either way. Like, no matter what the league decides to do, especially like as the TV contracts are swelling in a few years from now and the new CBA is coming quicker than you think, I have to imagine contract structures are going to change dramatically one way or the other. And I think the Packers are uniquely equipped to handle whatever comes their way. Now, as for how they actually spent their money this year, again, if you want to go check out their positional spending, what their cap hits are, like in terms of dollar amounts, as well as like their ranks in the league for how much they spend in certain position groups, that is also on our handy dandy companion infographic. But in terms of individual transactions, Josh Myers, center, is gone. Eric Stokes is gone. Jair Alexander, after that saga, is now a Raven. I mentioned in the Ravens episode last week that I didn't really think it was a big needle mover for Baltimore, and therefore I think it's a great move for the Packers that they finally just ripped that Band-Aid off and got it done. As far as notable retentions, Emmanuel Wilson is back, and as far as notable third-party additions, Nate Hobbs, who's a really good corner for the Raiders. I think he's always been an underappreciated corner, especially as a nickel. Brought him in from Vegas. Aaron Banks was their other big money signing at $19.2 million. This one more confuses me than anything else, because on some level I get it. Like, Aaron Banks, really good run blocker. This team runs the ball more than anybody else, literally, in the NFL. So bringing in a guard that is a really good run blocker makes sense from that perspective. But at the same time, I'm like, okay, but then why did you draft Jordan Morgan?
Free agency can create some very odd fan reactions. And the way Packers fans celebrated when Aaron Banks got signed for $19 million was surprising to me. I was like, so have you watched Aaron Banks? Yes, he's a very powerful dude. Always has been. Bulldozer in the run game. But when he's getting your quarterback slaughtered, are you going to cheer quite that loudly? It was just an odd. I think people just sort of get in a froth free agency and they just want to see money spent and people added and they're like, yeah, we got a guard. We paid him 19 million. He's great. And I was like, well, again, he's a very good player. He is very inconsistent in pass protection and he has had some rough years in San Francisco there. So I was just more surprised at the fervency. I don't even think fervency is a word. The fervor surrounding that addition was, it put me back a little bit. But what I was not surprised by was the fervor around selecting a wide receiver in the first round of the draft. Round 1, pick number 23, Matthew Golden, the wide receiver out of Texas, who's a player I really like. I wasn't as high on him as some other folks were in this class, but down at number 23, when we talked about it at the top of the show, talking about offensive balance, you really need somebody that can take the top off the defense and be a focal point, they hope, for opposing defenses. Matthew Golden was a very good get for them.
I really do like this pick. Like, I thought he was one of the few receivers in this class that was worth a first rounder, so I thought they took him in the appropriate range. Some people didn't even have him as like a high second round pick. Some people thought he was like a low end second round talent. I would disagree with that. Reminds me a lot of a young Brandon Cooks. Like, I see some Zay Flowers in there in the sense that at minimum, he's going to be a high end number 2 in the league, but you could very easily get away with him being your number 1. I think he's got great ball skills. I think he's a good route runner. I don't think he played to the 4.3 speed, but he's got enough speed that he's still a deep threat regardless. So it's like, I don't know, 4.3, 4.4, whatever. He wins deep. Good enough for me. Obviously good after the catch. Like, he is just a really, really, really solid all-around player. And even if I don't expect him to ever be like a top-end number 1, like even by Packer standards, like I don't think he's ever going to be Devontae. He's not going to be Jordy. He could be Randall Cobb. And Randall Cobb was really good for this team for a long time. So it's like, if you're getting Randall Cobb in the first round, like, yeah, I'd take that.
Yeah, my favorite Golden story actually came from Sark, and he talked about an opportunity he had last spring, and Golden kind of dogged a route a little bit, and the pass went out ahead of him. Sark got on him a little bit, and instead of, sulking or anything else, he said Golden took off his helmet, looked at him, and said, "Coach, that'll never happen again." And receivers say things like that, but Sark said it never did. From that point on, he just elevated everything about his game, his prep, his focus, his game day prep in terms of getting himself ready physically and mentally, and just locked in and became the player we saw at Texas over the last season. And that eventually got him drafted in the first round. I think that really speaks to his ability to absorb everything that's going to get thrown at him, from making the jump from college to the pros, and certainly stepping into what is a complex offense with Matt LaFleur. He doesn't seem like it's going to be too bright lights, big city for him. He's going to be able to manage that. And again, play up to his physical potential more quickly. Talk about physical potential in round 2, pick number 54, Anthony Belton, the tackle out of North Carolina State. We were talking about Aaron Banks being a road grader in the run game. Anthony Belton is an absolute bully and plays like an extremely athletic, big, heavy tackle that likes to assert his will and dominance in the run game, and is, I think, a good pass protector as well. I would say a developing pass protector, but I don't think he's reached his ceiling there. And honestly, the Packers do it every year. Belton was one of the picks that they chose that made me swear under my breath, because player I really liked, they got him at 54. Of course they did. He goes to a really good offensive line room situation that we talked about earlier that has a tremendous history developing players. And he's just one of those players I feel like, oh man, now he's going to be really good.
He's just got such powerful hands, right? And this is something that I've come to appreciate about offensive line play over the years. You can get away with having a lot of flaws if you have really strong hands. Right? Like, you don't have to have the most accurate punch. You don't have to have the quickest feet. You don't even have to have the best core strength. Because if you have really powerful hands that can stop a pass rusher in their tracks, more importantly, can't get swiped away. They can't control your wrist and disengage. Like, if you can just grab them and hold them here and they can't get outside of your frame, so you're never going to get called for a holding call anyway. Like, there's not a whole lot they can do at this point. So it's about how freaking strong his hands are. Like, that is his defining trait, and it's a good defining trait to have.
In round 3, pick number 87, they go back to the wide receiver well, and they get Savion Williams, who I think is a fascinating player out of TCU. Ran a ton of Wildcat for that team and didn't really do it as a sideshow. A lot of times when receivers are taking Wildcat snaps, you look at them and you think, oh, it's just because they're fast. They're hoping to, get him in space and maybe break a tackle. Savion Williams played quarterback in his background, and it showed. He was incredibly effective and made really good, what I would call RPO level decisions as a Wildcat player for TCU. Tall, he's fast. I thought he was underrated. A lot of people looked at the drops, and the drops were absolutely an issue just by number, but drops are kind of like interceptions. They are fluky and they go up and down. I'm not as worried about his ability to overcome that. I don't think he has bad hands. There's just so many things you can do with him on offense because of that varied experience and skill set. I really like this pick. I know some people were lukewarm on it. I think Savion Williams is a really fun player. I can't wait to see how they try and weaponize him.
I think he is going to play a very similar role, at least to start, that Tyler Ervin did for this team once upon a time. You remember where he was like half slot receiver, half running back, the jet sweep guy, the screen guy. I think that's what he's going to be for them, at least at first, just to get him on the field, because it's a way to just get the ball in his hands. And once he has the ball in his hands, like, he is a special mover. So I could see them, deploying him in all sorts of fun ways like that. I think he's going to make an impact on special teams. And who knows, like, he also could be like a wide receiver for them as well. Like, he does have true wide receiver skills, to your point. So that was one of the picks that happened, in round 3, where I was like, shit. It's like, damn, they took the good version of Velus Jones. Fuck. like he's going to do all the stuff that Velus is supposed to do, except he's actually good at it. Great.
He's actually going to be able to execute it. As we move into day 3, top of round 4, number 124, this is more of the Moneyball approach for that defensive pass rush for the Packers. Barron Sorrell, the defensive end from Texas. So a very big player, athletically gifted, has some speed. I wouldn't really say bend, but he does have some burst on the outside. He wins, again, when folks around him are pushing the inside of the pocket. He can be that sort of pincher on the outside. Heavy hands, plays the run pretty well, but again, more pop from an athlete of his size than you might expect. And then they followed up in round 5 at number 159 with Colin Oliver, the defensive end from Oklahoma State. I say defensive end loosely, defensive end linebacker. Oklahoma State moved him around. You were actually higher on Colin Oliver than I was, so I'll let you talk about him.
If I was going to use one word to describe him, it's juice. Like, his first step, his bend, his hips, the way that he can really kind of turn a corner and finish. I don't know exactly what role he's going to play for them. Is it going to be off-ball linebacker? Is it going to be edge rusher? What I do know is that as far as first steps go, he might have the best first step on that team right now. He's got some of the best bend on that team right now. So if I was them, I'd use him as like a DPR to start, and then we'll see if he can be an off-ball linebacker for us. They already have off-ball linebackers that they like, but still, I would try him as a DPR to start and just kind of use him as almost like the good version of Josh Uche when Uche was in New England, not Kansas City Uche, and see if he could be that kind of player for us.
As we move into the picks at the bottom end of day 3, which a lot of people think don't matter, I'm here to tell you that 2 of the 3 next picks, I think, are some of the Packers' best picks from the entire draft. And we've already waxed poetic about the guys at the top and how much we like them. But in round 6, pick number 198, one of my favorite players in the draft, Warren Brinson, the defensive tackle out of Georgia. Not necessarily a sexy pick and not even the most athletic on his own defensive line in college, but one of the best technical run defenders from the interior defensive tackle position in this draft. And that is a valuable skill set, and getting it, end of round 4, round 5, or round 6 is right where you get them. Warren Brinson, I'm here to tell you, is going to outperform that draft status. He is going to be one of those sort of annoyingly, naggingly good players that the Packers pick out of the depths of day 3, has a very specific role and executes it for years at an extremely low cost. And every time you look at who blew that run up, it's going to be, oh man, Warren Brinson stood his guy up, plugged that gap, made sure the run had to go somewhere else. Even if somebody else makes the play, really, really like Warren Brinson's skill set. Moving into round 7, number 237, a pick they got from the Steelers, Micah Robinson, the cornerback from Tulane. And then their final pick in round 7, number 250, a compensatory pick, John Williams, who they list as a guard but played tackle at Cincinnati. And this is another one that, because of where he's going, we got to see him at Shrine. I liked his feet. I thought there was something there. Sounds like they're going to move him inside and he's going to be a backup at guard for them. But either way, he's going to be one of these offensive linemen with positional flexibility. Stop me if you've heard this before. It's going to go to Green Bay as a low round pick and end up with an opportunity to play at some point somewhere along the line. Could be guard, could be tackle. And he's going to play really, really solid football for them. And everybody's going to go, who's John Williams? Where'd he come from? It's going to be from one of those quote unquote picks that don't matter, way down in the 7th round, number 250, couple picks away from the end of the draft. And they get John Williams out of Cincinnati. Player I think has some good potential, doesn't have to play this year, but I think has a skill set to play in the league, even as a starter. And if you get one of those in the 7th round, you're playing with house money.
But that legacy of O-line development is why, again, the Aaron Banks pickup makes no sense to me, because like your whole thing as a franchise is taking guys on day 3 and making them starters. Like, what are we paying money for? Like, you drafted a bunch of dudes this year that could probably play because you're the Packers. So it's like, I don't know. It's just odd. It's just odd. As far as notable UDFAs, I'm pretty sure the Packers now officially have more Georgia Bulldog defensive tackles than the Eagles do. They got Nazir Stackhouse, who I liked Brinson better than Stackhouse coming out, so I thought it was totally fair that he was the one that got drafted, whereas Stackhouse was UDFA. It's kind of priority UDFA grade for me anyway. But, he might be able to stick on this team. Like, they clearly love how Georgia teaches interior defensive line plays. You might as well just get as many of them as you can. And then Jamin Dumas Johnson, the linebacker out of Kentucky. I know you were a big fan of him. I'm not sure if he has a role in this team that isn't special teams. Like, I don't know if he's ever going to crack the field as a linebacker, but I could see him making the 53 if he turns out to be a good core special teamer.
Yeah, he's got good size. He is explosive. Now, when I talk about explosion as a linebacker, a lot of people are thinking sideline to sideline speed. He has almost sideline to sideline speed. He's not super fast at the top end, but in the short area, which is where inside linebackers really need it. A powerful dude. He jumped almost 40 inches. I think his vertical jump was 37. His broad was, I think, around 10 feet. And you're talking about a guy that tops out over 230 pounds. In the SEC, that explosion in short areas showed up time and again. And I think he could earn his way into the base defense eventually using those hallmarks. They are going to have to hide him a little bit. He is not a great pass coverage linebacker, again, especially on smaller, faster players that he might get matched up on. But there are a lot of players like him in the NFL that carve out long and fruitful careers. If he continues to develop, he's going to start on special teams. He might even end up on their practice squad. I don't think, again, given the fact that he wasn't drafted, teams are going to line up to quote unquote poach him and put him on their starting roster. But he has a real skill set and he's got experience in one of the best college football leagues in the country. I like the pickup because, again, you're not spending any draft capital to do it.
So that brings us to our final segment of the day, which is circling back to our 3 questions that make up the central pillar of this series. What was their identity before? What is their identity now? And what is the goal for this season? Their identity before, very run heavy, very RPO heavy, protecting their quarterback from himself, quite frankly. Not that Jordan Love is a bad quarterback, but I think throwing it 25 times is infinitely better for him than throwing it 35 times. Because once you get over 30, that's when the intrusive thoughts hits and it can spiral out of control quickly. If you throw it 25 times and you just say, Jordan, give us like 4 to 5 really special throws in any given week, I think he's great. So that was their identity before. What is their identity now? That is a much harder question, because I think that they inched closer in terms of their offseason moves this year to getting the star power necessary to like elevate them into the next tier of NFC team. But maybe I should rephrase the question, EJ. Has their identity changed enough for you?
They sure hope it has. And I think they're one of the most interesting teams in the NFL because I think the movement required on offense and the movement required on defense are very, very similar. They relied on the run heavily on offense. They want to balance that out with a better passing game. So they went out in the first round. They got a receiver they think can help elevate that passing game. And they want Jordan Love to be able to make more of those throws that show off his special traits. So again, they want to sort of moderate the run game with an increase in the pass game's efficiency. And on defense, it's the same thing. They want a better pass rush to help moderate that secondary that had a tremendous impact. But I think they know, like we know, they don't want to lean on that again. So they're trying to, again, balance out two halves of both sides of the ball. And yeah, they feel like small adjustments, small but meaningful adjustments. And if they can hit that very thin line of saying, yeah, we've kept the good things on both sides of the ball, but we've sort of made some slight additions that are going to give us more balance week to week, they're not going to lose those close games. They're not going to lose by 4 points as many times. And honestly, if you're this team, you only need to not lose by 4 points like 2 or 3 times, and you could be looking at a division win.
Which then kind of tees me up for, the question of what is the goal for this season? Because for me, I look at a bunch of Packers fans that are thinking like, we're going to be competing for a Super Bowl. Like, we were not that far off 2 years ago. Like, we were like one good drive away from beating the Niners. And at that point, anything's possible. Like, we should be on the Super Bowl shortlist. Like, again, you look at all the advanced stats that we rolled off in the top of the show. Like, this was one of the most powerful teams overall in the entire NFL. But I can't quite bring myself to put them in that Baltimore, Kansas City, Buffalo, Philly, even like Detroit category where I'm like, shit or get off the pot, like go win a Super Bowl. I can't quite put them in that group. So for me, my goal for the season is just win the division. Like maybe don't go 1-5 in your own division. Like win the damn thing, get to the playoffs and we'll see where you're at. But I still... And maybe it's just because this team is still so young. Even like it's been like 3 straight years of this team being one of the youngest cores in the NFL. I still don't know if they're like that team, right? That team where it's like all the pressure is on to win a ring right now. I kind of feel like they're not in the end of the window or the middle of the window. I still feel like they're at the beginning of the window. And so it's like, I don't know, start with the first step. Just win the division. And then maybe 2026, 2027, we'll talk about Super Bowl.
Yeah, because of the contract they were able to give Jordan Love, they're not at the end of their window. They're not like this year or next year or you're done. You're going to have to blow it all up. And it is an incredibly young team that is already very competitive. And like we've said throughout the episode, was extremely close last year. Was in a tremendously competitive division. So it might sound like a backhanded compliment to say, hey, just try to win the division. Just trying to win this particular division is going to be rough business. If they accomplish that this year with a young team that is not maxed out either financially or certainly age-wise, yeah, they're opening their window. And then you really are giving Jordan Love a puncher's chance. You're getting him into the playoffs and hoping he gets hot against a certain team because, again, when he flashes that ability, he is a top 10 quarterback in the league. He just doesn't do it consistently. But you're not going to get that chance if you don't win the division. And that's going to be a tough thing to do this year.
Hell, even just being a wild card team in the NFC North is going to be a tough thing to do this year. Like there's no bad NFC North teams, like at all. So like, honestly, maybe the goal should be like beat the Bears again. Like that's not going to be easy. Like their one division win last year was against Chicago by 1 point. That was the Matt Eberflus Bears. Like you beat Matt Eberflus by 1 point. I still think that there's a couple steps to go between barely beating Matt Eberflus and winning a Super Bowl, right? So I don't know. It's a tough division. EJ.
No doubt about that. And again, a very good team with a very experienced, professional, solid coaching staff that we've liked and continue to like. And honestly, that's really annoying because when they draft players on the third day and you're rolling your eyes going, oh man, that guy's going to be good. Of course he's going to be good. If he hadn't gone to the Packers, I wouldn't be worried about it. That's a mark or a hallmark of the quality of the organization. And for all the guff we give Packers fans because we're Bears fans, there's begrudging respect there as well. Now, I couldn't bring myself to wear a Packers shirt because of that, but I am wearing a shirt from Homage, and it is one of my only 2 green shirts. So that's about as far as I'm going to go, but know that it comes from a place of respect. We dislike you because you have kicked the crap out of us for a long time.
Well, Packers fans, if you're still here at the end of the show, we appreciate you. Hopefully you stick around for the rest of the division because we got the Vikings tomorrow. We got the Lions the day after that. We got the Bears episode yesterday. So if you want to go listen to us, well, you probably don't want to listen to us talk about the Bears for an hour because you're Packers fans. But hey, if you're morbidly curious about what's going on over in Chicago, you can go check that show out. And then, of course, on Friday, we have our division recap shows that are on Patreon for all of our lovely patrons, where we pick our division MVP, our division winner, our offensive and defensive player of the year for the division, rookies of the year for the division, coach of the year, et cetera, et cetera. We have our NFC North bold predictions. So that's all going to be coming out on Friday over on the Patreon. I don't think I'm missing anything. Again, infographics. If you want to get all the data that we talked about today and more, there's like 18 pages of it. That's also available on the Patreon. So I got nothing else for you guys today. We'll be back tomorrow with the Vikings, who, if nothing else, are intriguing going into the 2025 season. A lot of major changes on that roster, including at the quarterback position. So lots to go over tomorrow with Minnesota, and we will see you back here, same time, same place for that.